This may look like a ball of 1,000,000 individuals, but make no mistake, the colony acts as one. A superorganism with a sensory system of 2 million antennae. A skeleton made from the living bodies of workers.
Hi, my name is Hosein.
And I'm Juan José.
What you just saw there was an extract from BBC's Earth, The Hunt. The title of the clip is Army of Ants Rampage Through the Forest. Whilst the title might exaggerate a little bit the scale by which the forest is affected by the ants, the proportions are not all that off. And those tiny ants can sure cause a lot of trouble considering their individual size, strength, and their senses. Such an analogy brings us to the topic of this video, swarm robotics, and how small and simple robots can contribute en masse to large, complex results.
Before we get into the topic of robotics, we like to start the video with a small introduction. To begin with, we have a few questions. Does it make sense to study the individual behavior of an ant without considering the colony? How will you explain group behavior with a simple equation? Is the planet Earth a single living organism that is incredibly complex? Throughout the centuries, human beings have managed to create models of natural phenomena that can go as far as predicting the future, and will seem like magic to our early ancestors. We know, for example, that what makes us not fall off a bicycle when it is moving is described by exactly the same equation that makes the Earth maintain our orbit around the Sun. It is possible to explain then all the phenomena of the universe as if were pieces of a complex clockwork? This question has generated different approaches, such as reductionism and emergentism. It is impossible to avoid talking about emergent systems when we attempt to understand how life works.
In the animal world, we usually see such small task divisions in the form of herds, common in many mammals. Mammals also produce few descendants and focus more in nurturing them to ensure that they survive. In contrast, other animals such as bees or ants rely on cooperation and coordination to determine the success of the entire colony. Such animals produce large numbers of offspring, though only a fraction of them survive. Both strategies are different approaches at survival through time. The organization and cooperation seen in some animals, such as bees and ants, is commonly referred to as swarm behavior. The individuals in a swarm are generally of the same size and aggregate together to achieve a specific goal. The benefits of creating a swarm, dispersing individuals and aggregating them when necessary, has a number of clear advantages. One of them is the optimized exploration of environments. Another one is that the survival of the swarm doesn't necessarily depend on the success of a single individual of the swarm, but is rather judged on the overall performance of the group. Swarms can also attack and defend in large numbers, so as to appear more massive, act stronger, and be more versatile. Furthermore, they can act as an extensive alarm system that will react to disturbances and dangers.
We can see swarm behavior in nature. In birds, that is form optimized patterns to fly in a flock, or shoal of fish that turn into shapes that allow them to look bigger and evade predators. These social behaviors exist in certain insects, crustaceans and mammals. It is mostly observed in ants, bees, and in termites. A hive could be analyzed as a single system, almost analogous to a living organism with intelligence many times superior to that of each of its individuals. Almost like analyzing neurons, simple live beings collectively manage to bring out intelligence and even consciousness. This pattern is repeated at different magnitudes, starting for simple organisms and emerging as advanced systems. There are many examples of complex phenomena that are emergent and to date cannot be explained in an individual way. Phenomena such as human cognition and consciousness only make sense when clusters of neurons, the whole brain, and even the body are taken into account. But if only a single neuron is studied individually, we will not find any of it.
Is it possible to simulate behavior that is emergent? In the 1940s, John von Neumann had proposed a mathematical formulation to swarm behavior. Theoretical machines could create exact copies of themselves. To define his machine in more detail, von Neumann defined the concept of a cellular automaton. The one seen in this video consists of a two-dimensional grid of cells, each of which can be in one of the 29 states at any point in time. At each time step, each cell updates its state based on the previous time step, as well as the states of the surrounding cells. The rules governing these updates are identical for all cells. Furthermore, in the year 1970, and based in the works of von Neumann, the British mathematician John Conway set out to demonstrate the existence of complex systems emerging from simple structures. He defined only 4 single rules for the reproduction and demise of cells, which can be visually thought of as pixels. These cells die if they are completely surrounded by other cells, overpopulation, or when they are completely alone, isolation. On the other hand, any cell that is alive and has 2 or 3 other living neighbors carries on to the next generation. Any dead cell with exactly 3 live neighbors becomes a live cell, as if by reproduction. He called it the game of life. The interesting thing about this game is that it's the equivalent to a universal Turing machine. That is, everything that can be computed algorithmically can be computed in the game of life. Not only the cells develop a complex behavior, but new organisms composed by cells evolve and adapt like life itself. The game of life led scientists in the field to rethink whether the complexity of life is just an emergent behavior or basic simple rules. Between the 70s and the 80s, a theory for agent-based models began to be developed. It combines elements of game theory, complex systems, emergence, computational sociology, and evolutionary programming. The idea is to simulate actions and interactions of autonomous individuals within an environment and thereby determine what results they produce in the system as a whole. In 1986, Craig Reynolds, an expert in artificial life and computer graphics, developed BOIDS, an artificial life program which simulates the flocking behavior of birds. BOID means bird-oid object, which refers to a bird-like object. The BOIDS framework is used quite a lot in simulations and animations to represent the movement of groups of animals like birds, fish, or other creatures. In some video games like Half-Life or even movies. But not only these algorithms have emerged to generate more realistic animations, BOIDS is also useful in the control and stabilization of teams of simple UAVs.
Thanks to swarm intelligence, groups of animals can solve optimization problems through search and group work. Ants, for example, have very simple nervous system and a tiny brain, but they are able to create magnificent anthills and solve optimization problems. The ant colony optimization algorithm, ACO, is a probabilistic technique for solving computational problems which can be reduced to finding good paths through a diagram. This algorithm works exactly as ants do, and find optimal routes between points. Just as ants walk aimlessly leaving a trail of pheromones that will be evaporated over time. Depending on how strong the trail is, other ants will have better chance to follow in it. The algorithm removes time long routes in favor to short ones, where new ant paths will find their way. In this Biorobotics course, we work with the particle swarm optimization algorithm, which besides simulating a swarm of bees looking for pollen, allows among other things to find the parameters for a bipedal robot to walk stably and in the fastest way in a global minimum.
From software to hardware, swarm robots are increasingly being used to find optimized paths and/or better solutions in the physical world. While it is still a fairly new field, the goal is to make robots that can work together, transfer data wirelessly, and complete tasks as a group. This form of swarm robotics is a developing subfield of robotics that emerged from the field of artificial swarm intelligence. as well as in the biological studies of insects, ants, and other fields in nature where swarm behavior occurs. The tasks can be solved as they are, through top-down approaches, or divided into smaller and easier tasks to be solved through bottom-up methods. These are some of the best examples we found for swarm robots being used today. At an Amazon warehouse, carrying goods. As a swarm of Quadrotors, like the University of Pennsylvania uses them for. As microsensors, like in this example, where they're following the light. As building blocks for swarm-human interfaces, like the Zoids. The Symbrion, which is a symbiotic evolutionary robot organism in a project funded by the European Commission. Or like the kilobots from Harvard, which are low cost and in mass numbers. Or like Raffaello D'Andrea's projects, which uses quadcopters in the most versatile ways: construction, or art. In the short term, we can already think about some examples of what swarm robots can be used for. Fast detailed mappings of floors, construction, art shows, find and rescue missions, ecology, farming, border patrol, and even space colonization in the long term.
And used as when we as a species launch probes into outer space, struggling to know in which direction we should send our robots to achieve the best solutions. It could be possible to take advantage of having a huge group of very small self-replicating von Neumann robots that can travel through vast distance into space at near to speed of light, and when get to hospitable locations, self-replicate and expand, creating exponential colonies. In such a scenario, the majority of the probes will be destroyed, but the search for Earth-like planets will now get swarm optimized. Could our swarms dominate the galaxy?
I've got the coordinates. All right, let's turn them around.
Yes, sir.